Hello and welcome to another episode of LGR Play. As always, I'm your host Mark Hamer, and I'm joined today by returning guest and host of the excellent Honourable Mentions podcast, soon to be a panel at EGX 2018. It's Mark Chazzee Reay. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me again.
Not a problem. How are you, good sir?
Yeah, doing very well actually. Looking forward and nervous to doing a panel at EGX, so lots of planning at the moment.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah, you know, just walking onto a stage for the first time ever in front of people, talking about things. Easy. Not a problem at all.
It's going to be massively nerve-wracking, I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh, great, thanks.
I've been on stage before in various capacities. It's always nerve-wracking. I don't think anybody gets used to it, no matter how confident they may look. Right, so, got you on the show today to, for once, talk about a hot new game rather than, you know, an old game in a desperate attempt to be perceived as vaguely relevant. So we're going to talk about a game that is probably, unfortunately, better known in the wider gaming community, at least at the moment, for a scandal that's adjacent to it than the game itself. And that game is, of course, Dead Cells.
Yay.
So Dead Cells I played 2 years ago at EGX, actually.
Oh, nice.
It was in the res section where all the indie games are, like the best part of EGX. Like if you want to go and queue up for 40 minutes to play a 10-minute demo of the new Gears of War or something like that, it's actually bag. Great. I preferred hanging out down at the indie end of EGX. That's where all the fun stuff was. That's where the interesting things were. There were some good games there, actually. There was like Gang Beasts and a whole bunch of
it was a good year.
Games.
That was a good year.
So yeah, I played Dead Cells there, and of all the games that I played there that year, that was one of the ones that stuck in my head. And I was like, this just feels really good to play. I can't wait to actually get my hands on the actual game. And I've had to wait nearly 2 years. Because I didn't get early access on PC or anything like that.
So you didn't do what I did.
No. So I've only started playing it properly about a month or so ago when it first came out. Picked it up on Nintendo Switch, but you've been playing it, and I've been watching you play it on your streams.
Yes.
For quite a while now.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, I picked it up. There was a massive hype around this game, probably around the same time that you were playing it at EGX, and a lot of kind of UK games critics were raving about it. Dead Cells, and I thought, do you know what, this sounds great, and it was on like an insane, I think it was like 18 quid or something, early access, like really early days. I thought this, and everyone's going on about how it was just so amazing, like the controls were amazingly tight, and I looked at the art style, and it was actually the art style was the one thing that sort of swung it for me, and I thought, no, I really like the way this looks. If it controls as well as it looks, then I'm going to be happy. It's worth taking a punt. And yeah, I just basically picked it up on early access, and I've been chipping away at it for probably like a year and a bit. And it's the thing with it is it's gone through so many iterations that what it is now and the game you're finally playing is this really amazing distillation of just loads of updates and loads of kind of basically, like trial and error iteration that's been you can see, I can see the work that's really gone into it, and part of that it just makes you feel even more enthused about when the game finally comes out, because you know what's gone in and what's been taken out and how many changes, and vast changes as well, that have been put in, just like crazy stuff, like the whole UI that you are playing the game with now wasn't there. It was a completely different UI and stuff like that, and it's just it's wonderful to follow a game all the way through that whole process. It's been great. And I've just been so excited for people to finally pick it up now, because the game is incredible, and it's always been. It's one of those games where you feel like they fell onto the mechanics and that kind of tightness of control and animation straight away. And now they've just gone, oh, well, now we can take all this extra time to just refine the techniques and the kind of the mechanics and all the periphery stuff around it to just make it this really, really insanely tight package. There's an unfortunate turn of phrase, but yeah, and that's what it is. It's come out to these full of plaudits because every single minute detail has been honed. And that's just wonderful to see, and it's wonderful that I now know that people are going to be picking it up and feeling the same way I do about the game, hopefully.
Yeah. So, for anyone who doesn't know, it is a run-based Metroidvania roguelike sort of game. It takes elements from Metroidvania games. It takes elements from roguelikes like Rogue Legacy. Yeah. It takes elements from Dark Souls.
I was going to say Spelunky as well.
It takes something from Spelunky, yeah. Every time you go through an area, like there are different, I say worlds, different levels.
There's different biomes, basically.
Yeah,
what you have,
biomes,
the bio name is always the same. So you'll have the promenade or the toxic sewers or whatever. But that will be procedurally generated every time you restart a new campaign.
You know what sort of enemies you're going to come across in that area, and you know what sort of environmental obstacles you're going to come across.
Very much like
the layout will be completely different.
Like I say, very much like Spelunky is. But the main difference to Spelunky is that the loot and the weapons and the armour and the kind of the turrets and the peripheral system weaponry that you can use, they are all... They generate differently every time you run through the game. So every run that you go on, you're having to adapt yourself to the loadout you're picking up.
Yeah.
Which is like a really interesting way of adjusting difficulty, but also like keeping interest as well, because you're constantly having to adapt your tactics, very much like you would do in a Dark Souls game. I don't really want to kind of keep harping on, hopefully through this whole conversation about Dark Souls, but there are very interesting parallels between the way these two games operate, this kind of adaptive difficulty.
There absolutely are. Like, I was literally just about to make a Dark Souls comparison myself, or actually a contrast to Dark Souls, should we say. Because in Dark Souls, you've got... let's say you're trying to get past a particular boss. You die at that boss or on the way to the boss, and you respawn at the nearest bonfire or the last bonfire you visited, and then you have a run to the boss, and you know that run, and the more you do it, the more you know it. You know exactly where the enemies are, you know exactly where they're going to come from, you know how to take them down, you know how to get to the boss. But in this one, instead of knowing exactly what you're going to be coming across on your run, you kind of know roughly what sort of enemies and environmental things you're going to come across, but you don't know what weapons you're going to find, what power-ups you're going to find, how much of your health potions you've had to chug because you've come across a room which is just full of enemies.
Yeah, you will get shafted and screwed at some point.
Oh, yeah. And so it's not, you can't fall into a pattern of like getting to the boss with exactly the same setup each time. And so I have beaten once, but have struggled and failed to beat every time since then. The boss called, is it the Concierge? The first?
Yeah, the one on the bridge.
Yeah, the rock monster thing on the bridge, yeah. And so, like, the first time I went through, I managed to beat him just because I'd had just the right drops. I got a couple of those little turret drops that were doing lots of damage. I hadn't used any of my health potions. I'd got a couple of decent weapons, and I managed to just about do more DPS to him than he could do to me and take him out.
And you came out with a sliver of health at the end of it.
Yeah. And then died shortly afterwards. And then sent all the way back to the beginning and haven't been able to get past him since. But apart from that, I feel like every run of getting a little bit better.
Do you also feel like you're learning the ways that the different equipment, very much like, say, like with PUBG, where you learn the guns as you pick them up and use them?
Yeah.
Throughout constant battles. It's the same with this. You're learning which bits of equipment complement each other, which bits of equipment you like, which bits fit your style, which bits you're just going to have to adapt your style to kind of. There's just so much to this where, like you say, because you're getting thrown in at the deep end and you're just having to pick up and go along with whatever you can take. Sometimes you'll get that god run where you'll get the turret you love, the bow you love, the sword that also does, with maybe a grenade drop that does fire damage, and you'll get a sword with like the creates oil splatters that then create more damage for it, and you can stack things and all that kind of stuff. And you'll just get that god run, and you'll like you say, you'll crash through the concierge quite easily.
Yeah.
The next run, you may not get that at all, and you might only have a shield and quite a ropey dagger, but you've got a decent turret. And then you're going through having to adapt your style to, right, well, I'm gonna have to learn parrying and being more, rather than speed running through the level to try and get through as quickly as possible. You know, you're taking a slow, measured approach to everything, and it's constant up and down and up and down. And like you say, eventually what it's doing is it's teaching you to actually play with all the equipment, and you're slowly just inching your way up and up and up through the kind of skill levels, and you don't realise it. And that's what I love about it. It's, again, very much like a Soulsborne game. You get equipment, and you'll just suddenly or you'll get an enemy or a set of enemies or a set of runs where you'll constantly, you'll keep coming up against them, and then you'll suddenly, at the start they were just taking you out one shot, and now you're just, you know, taking that enemy out lickety split, no problems at all. And it's that, but you don't know how you suddenly did that. It's just a constant repetition and constant learning. And it's the same thing with Dead Cells. You kind of get a feel for how the levels open up, and whether you should be going up or down to get to a boss, or a special room that may have a scroll in it that will give you abilities like extra health or more combat damage. And that's the other thing as well, is that as you're going through the levels, you're having to make adjustments of, right, do I want to keep picking up scrolls and adding to my health so it can make it easier for the boss fight at the end, or do I just want to go straight DPS and really ramp my DPS up? Do I want to sort of balance it across everything so that I'm a jack of all trades? And there's that constant thought and tactical thing going on in the background, as well as all the equipment you're picking up and how that all plays into it. And there's just so much going on in the meta in this game. It's wonderful.
When you first start out the game, you'll have a pretty trash sword, and you get a choice of picking up like a crappy wooden shield or a crappy wooden bow. And then you'll get other weapons that will drop randomly during your run. But you'll also get blueprints that will drop. And then you can spend your cells, if you manage to make it to one of the checkpoint areas between the different biomes, to be able to unlock those blueprints. But then even once you've unlocked the blueprints, that I think the only way you can get them to drop is if you unlock the ability, unlock the upgrade, which means that you start the game with a random weapon.
Yeah, so you'll spend your cells to open up the ability to start with a random sword or a random bow or a random shield. There's so many other different types of random kind of permanent unlocks that you can get, which obviously all plays into
your the number of charges on your health potion and things like which is massive. That's a massive deal. So yeah, like you were saying, sometimes the loadout that you are given kind of lends itself to you having to take a slightly more defensive approach, because maybe your up close weapons are garbage, but you've got a couple of really good turrets, or a good turret and a good grenade that you can chuck down and help deal with the enemies. But the actual like hand-to-hand, like meleeing combat and everything feels so good, so tight, so fast.
That's what I was going to say. It's swift. It's the animations give you great feedback, and not only your animations but the enemy's animations as well, and the sound. You will get so much feedback from the game, and you will never feel like it's always your fault. You will never feel like the game has let you down on giving you the feedback to kind of react to something. It's always your reactions or your poor decision making that will ruin your run.
The game isn't cheap.
No, I mean, the one thing it does do is, or it seems to do, is it doesn't seem to give you invulnerability once you've been hit. It doesn't give you, normally like sort of platformers and Metroidvania games like this give you like a period of invulnerability, so you don't get bounced around by enemies. This doesn't. This is very much like Spelunky, where you can get bounced from enemy to enemy and suddenly you've taken 3/4 of your health off. Yeah. And you're in a really bad situation, needing to sort of chug a health potion when you didn't really want to.
I'm pretty sure you do get iframes on your dodge roll, though.
Yeah, you do. Your dodge roll, that is the ability that you want to be using constantly.
Yeah.
Because, you'll be able to slip under things or through things or past attacks. It's
that
very,
and
very important.
like downward slam. When you jump down onto enemies and like you hold down and jump again and you do like a slam that stuns and in some cases kills enemies as well. That's super helpful.
But there's just like wonderful. But again, this is what I'm saying about the kind of tightness and the brilliance of the mechanics. You've got the slam, you've got the dodge roll that are incredibly important. You can jump and fire a bow, and that will give you a very, very short period of time where you'll hang in midair. So you can do these kind of crazy jump across a gap, hang in midair, fire a bow, cross the gap, grab onto a ledge, make it to the other side, slash, roll, dodge, and then double jump out of it. And you can combo all these moves into one another. And if you're quick enough and your mind is sharp enough, there are some incredibly wonderful kind of combinations you can pull off, which just looks absolutely like stunning and like anything in a fighting game.
And the game does really encourage speed. Like, it feels like as you're mowing through enemies, you seem to pick up momentum, and then you can run faster. But there are these gates dotted around each of the biomes that lock after a certain amount of time, and you've got like a clock in the corner which tells you how long that run has been. And most of the time, you'll get to the gate and it'll say this gate locked. Like 32 seconds.
It's always
ago,
It's always 2 minutes 15 for me.
Really? Always
this gate is always locked 2 minutes 15 ago, and you just think, how do you get here this quickly?
Yeah.
And but
if
again,
you do get through them, it's just like
it's an Aladdin's
you just get
cave,
absolute
isn't it?
grip of cells for upgrades and loads of gold and everything for buying,
and normally a blueprint, and kind of you get some really cool stuff, so you get rewarded for it. But again, you may be missing out on scrolls of power and that kind of thing. So everything's always a trade-off in this game, and it's wonderful. And like I say, I love the fact that they've thrown in a speedrunning element to this game, just randomly. You could just literally blitz through the level using the dodge roll to dodge everything, get to the end and nick out the other side. You're underpowered and you've got absolutely no chance in the next level because you haven't picked up any scrolls. But if you're a good enough player and you can sort of, again, you've got the reactions, then this game caters for that. It caters for the guy who's going to want a turtle. It caters for the guy who wants to combo up his abilities. It caters for the guy who wants to sit back and let his turrets do the work. There's just so many ways that you can play this game, and it caters for so many different types of player. And I think that's the successful part of this. It's not just a Consolvania game.
No, and you were mentioning earlier about the animations. That's one of the things I absolutely love about it as well. Is the way that your character moves. The dumb little thumbs up or the shoulder shrug he gives when you're interacting with the characters.
I've seen a lot of people either that rubs them completely the wrong way, rubs them up completely the wrong way, or people absolutely love it, and they're saying, oh yeah, it's conveying so much through, without speech, because there's not much speech in this. There's not much. Well, there's no sort of text on screen other than with NPCs and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You're technically not a character. You're a ball of slime that's infested a headless corpse in a prison, and so your character doesn't have a head with which to speak. So you can only do things like giving a thumbs up or shrugging your shoulder.
That's right.
But the actual animation of how the character runs and jumps and moves and everything like that, it's I know it's all been hand animated, but it kind of reminds me of like a almost exaggerated version of the old like rotoscope style.
I was going to say a Monkey Island, like a kind of that kind of thing,
like Prince of Persia, flashback,
or Another World, or whatever it was called.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a very good actually point. It's like sort of it is very Another Worldy in its look, but it's a lot more sort of bright and like with the details filled in, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So no, but like I said right at the start, the art style is what really drew me to it. So I just thought this looks absolutely stunning, and then as it's gone on and on and on, it's just become more and more beautiful because, like I say, with the UI was all pixelated and it was all in that kind of 16-bit aesthetic. And then at some point they decided actually that's really difficult to read, and they made it into a vector style type, and that made a lot of the feedback you were getting from the game a lot more easy to pass when quick, like you say, through, as you're speeding through the game. So it's just like little like looks at those kind of things that they've looked at those details and gone, no, we need to change the font on this because it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's just that little detail. You just don't think of it when you're playing the game as the final product.
It was in development for quite a long time. It was in early access for over a year. They spent a lot of time polishing that game to a perfect sheen.
Yeah.
And it is, and it's been and that's been reflected in the the reaction that the game's been getting.
How have you found the difficulty?
I played a fair chunk of Rogue Legacy, which is a similar kind of game, but bounced off that hard.
Yeah.
I tried to play a lot of Salt and Sanctuary, which is again kind of a similar
the other Souls-like platformer.
And then bounced off that real hard. I haven't played Hollow Knight. I've heard that's another game that's quite similar-ish in a way, but it's very good. But this just feels I like a game that is hard but isn't cheap.
Yeah.
This game, it fits that perfectly. It is hard, but there is nothing in there which is insurmountable, even for someone with bad reaction speed like me. There's nothing in there that's insurmountable, and if you die, it's absolutely your fault. The game hasn't cheated you in some way. It's that you got greedy, or you didn't dodge in time, or whatever.
I on the stream sort of likened it to Bloodborne in that it rewards aggression.
Yes.
Whereas maybe a Dark Souls or like Salt and Sanctuary would regard kind of being a bit slower and a bit more methodical and a little bit more measured.
Yeah.
This really does reward the guys who just want to get in there, slash and burn, and kind of use their wits and try and get through as aggressively as humanly possible, because that seems to be the way that you can get the gates that are closing in 2 minutes or whatever, and pick up a lot of cells at the same time. It's that's always been the analogy for me, is that I've always said to people, look, it's more like a Bloodborne than it is a anything else really, than a I don't know, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is a great game, but you can be quite measured and you can sort of cheese things and run back and forth and get away from stuff. This you can't. You've just got to keep barreling forward.
Yeah.
And I don't think Hollow Knight looks like that kind of game either. It doesn't look like the kind of game you sort of barrel constantly forward trying to...
No. From what I understand, that takes you spend a lot of time just exploring and trying to find like a map to be able to find out where you're going. It's a lot more of the trying to work out where the hell you're going, whereas Dead Cells is just a constant push forward. And one of the reasons why I think this is a perfect sort of this style of game for a lapsed gamer is that it is entirely possible to start the game and get to the end boss in half an hour.
Yeah.
You won't.
No. I mean, I've been locked into runs that just go on forever.
Yeah. But at any point, if you just stop playing the game, back out to your dashboard or desktop or whatever, go back in, you'll start from exactly where you left off. Although you have the option, if you feel like you've got your run is doomed, you can just start the run over again at any point if you want. So you can play it in short chunks or a long chunk, or you can, if you're incredibly lucky and or incredibly good, get to the final boss in half an hour and beat it. But then even if you do that, like you won't be done with the game, because there's new weapons and abilities and things to unlock.
Well, the thing is, there's routes as well, because there's easy routes and hard routes. This is what I was saying to you earlier about adaptive difficulty. If you go, I can't even remember. It's something like Promenade, then Ramparts, and then to the the Black Bridge, that's considered the easy route. The harder route is the sort of toxic sewers and everything on that path. And there are actually different paths and different areas, and then there's sort of semi-hidden areas that you can get to, like the ossuary and stuff like that. And it isn't just one A to B to C path. It's actually it's almost like, when I look at it, is like the Outrun map. You know, when you see the map in Outrun, you've got all the forks and then forks off of forks. And there are definitely... like you say, harder and more easy routes. Again, very much like the start of Dark Souls, where if you go left, suddenly you're into an incredibly hard area you shouldn't be in, and if you go right, you're up and into the slightly easier area from the first bonfire. So again, there's another parallel.
But, it's not a linear game.
No, nowhere near that.
And there are plenty of little secrets, and there are abilities to unlock which will give you the access to get to certain paths. Like, you'll get to places and you'll be like, all right, I can see that I'm supposed to be able to get up there, but I don't have the ability to yet.
And you unlock the vines and other abilities like that, and that will give you access to different areas and different routes. And at the moment, I'm trying to get hold of is it called the Ram rune, the rune in the floor? So all the runes that you see in the floor, you can smash through, and that's just I just cannot beat the boss I need to beat for that. I've just got. I'm there, and again, this is the thing. I go in incredibly aggressive. My tactics normally are to try and find a weapon that deals high damage, ramp up the kind of combat damage, take less health. But now, looking at the boss that I'm trying to beat, it may be better for me to start going in with a shield and turrets and kind of parrying his attacks and letting the turrets take the strain. And that's not usual for me, but that seems to be where I'm getting more joy. So again, that's the game teaching me, right? Okay, you can go in aggressive and you go crazy, but actually, like, if you keep shifting your tactics around and you learn to use these other things, you'll get way more joy, and you'll be way less frustrated.
There seems to be a myriad of different ways that you can play through it, as well as a myriad different routes that you can take through it.
That's it.
On top of the fact that the game reconfigures itself every time you die.
So the game is just constantly trying to keep you interested, and that's the one thing that I think is fascinating about it. I haven't played a game,
and it does works.
That,
and then even on top of that, you've got you unlock the ability to do like the daily challenges. So there'll be near the beginning of the game, there'll be a door that you can go through, or you can actually access it from the menu. I think at the top of the home menu, like a daily challenge where there'll be like a series of rooms to fight through with a specific loadout and different types of enemies. And I've tried to do it a couple of times, and it's been an absolute joke. I've lasted seconds because.
I mean,
I'm still learning.
Again, there are levels. There are levels to this game of kind of like you and the level of you and I, and then there's like these super hardcore twitchy gamers that just are like speedrunners who are just ultra precise and ultra just amazing at everything. And watching them play there, I mean, I thought I was alright at this game, and then I've watched like proper speedrunners play it, and my word, like, I'm nowhere near. And it does reward that kind of excellence.
It does, but it's not inaccessible to people of less skill. Like even casual players like us. There's a very good chance that both of us will finish it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Eventually.
Eventually.
It might take a while, but we'll get there.
So you've got it on the. I'm assuming you've got it on the Switch.
Yes, I've got it on the Switch.
So how are you finding it portably?
I haven't played it too much portably, to be honest. It's fine. I mean, that screen is lovely, and it's one of the biggest screens you can play a mobile game on outside of a tablet.
That's it.
But it does. It's easier if I'm playing on my TV and I'm using a Pro controller. But it's perfectly playable. Like, I've gotten to the concierge and died to the concierge whilst playing in handheld mode. It's fine. But I just prefer to play it on the TV.
That's the one thing with the Switch is that I'm getting this issue with another game that's similar to this, which was Enter the Gungeon. And playing it in handheld mode is absolutely fine, and I do rather well. But there's something about being able to see the sprites slightly bigger
Yep.
And I don't know, it's something weird that it just gives you that little bit of extra real estate. Really, really does help.
It does, yeah.
You know,
especially and especially in like Enter the Gungeon, where there is a lot going on the screen, and there can sometimes be a lot going on the screen in Dead Cells.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you've got it on Windows. I've got it on Switch. It's also available on Mac and Linux and PS4 and Xbox One, and it'll probably end up on everything eventually.
Someone's fridge or something.
Yeah, you'll be able to play it on your watch. It's a fantastic game. It runs beautifully as well. Even on the Switch, I haven't come across any like slowdown or anything like that yet. Good. Even in cases where there has been a lot of enemies on the screen, it's all worked. Seems to work fine. There's never been any drops in frame rate or anything.
Yeah, considering this game was in early access, I've never ever had any technical issues with it.
Yeah,
and that's one thing I will say, and that's just unheard of for early access games. You take early access to mean, right, there's going to be a few hiccups and problems, and it's not going to load or it's going to crash to the desktop, and I've had none of that. I've never had any problems with the mechanics. I've never had any problems with the controls. The one issue I had was when it went to final release, they changed 2 of the buttons over, and even in the menu, you can reconfigure the buttons. So even that wasn't too much of a hardship. So like whoever the team are on this, from an engineering kind of, sort of coding standpoint, like they've just absolutely smashed this out of the park.
It's made by Motion Twin, who are a little indie team from Bordeaux.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, Dead Cells is great. I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Even for a lapsed gamer, even for someone who doesn't have a huge amount of time or doesn't feel like they are that good at action platformers or anything like that. I mean, for me, usually something like Donkey Kong Country is like the ceiling of what I would accept to be, what would take to be an acceptable difficulty. I enjoy stuff that's harder than that, like Celeste and Super Meat Boy and things like that, but they are obtuse sometimes. Dead Cells is the perfect difficulty.
That's it. That's it. You never feel like you're banging your head against it.
Yeah. So anyone can get through it. It's just it might take you a little bit longer than someone else.
That's it.
Yeah, it's great. Go and check it out.
Game. Yeah, do it.
Well, thanks for joining me, Chazzee.
No problem.
Where can people find you online?
People can find me online out on Twitter at CH4ZZEE. That's Chazzee, but with the A replaced with a 4. And if you are going to Eurogamer 2018, then you will find me on Saturday, the 22nd of September at 4 p.m. in the EGX Fringe stage, doing Honourable Mentions. 2 special guests to be announced, but they'll be telling us all about the hidden gems that they believe should be getting an honourable mention that just miss out on their top 10s. So if you fancy coming along to that, it'd be great to see you.
Well, the podcast's great, so I expect the chat will be great as well.
Fingers crossed.
Well, everybody's got that game, haven't they? That's like you've got a massive soft spot for it, but it's not good enough to fit on your all-time top 10, but you still love it.
Yeah,
I've got a few.
That's the problem, is people have a lot of these, and then it then becomes even more of a mission to then try and pare those down to that one top one that kind of I just can't I can't put it on my list, but that's the one I really want on there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd imagine Dead Cells is probably going to be that for me on my all-time list. I think that's going to be kind of well up there because it's brilliant, but are there other games that are going to beat this out? Possibly, but I'd like to get that on the list. So yeah, that's what Honourable Mentions is all about.
Yeah, so if you're at EGX, come along and see it.
Do it.
Saturday, 4 p.m. Well, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed the video, then please do hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a comment with your thoughts on Dead Cells. As always, you can find us on Twitter at LapsGamer. You can listen to the Laps Gamer Radio podcast on iTunes, Podbean and Spotify. And you can email us. The address is lapsgamerradio@gmail.com, and you can visit our blog at lapsgamer.com. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode of LGR Play. Goodbye.
Bye.